Hi, I'm Liz.
And I'm Rhea.
Welcome to Karma's My Bitch, a podcast about
sex,
love,
magic,
desire,
purpose,
bliss,
and how life isn't simply the stories we tell ourselves. If you really know that you're divine and everything is an extension of you and somehow you can create a whole new world and everything else, like it can feel not only very overwhelming, but it can also render everything nothing in a way.
Yeah.
So I find this episode really interesting because it's like, where do we find that balance? Where do we find that
That's a good question.
Peace in the middle where we're not constantly over and then having to like come down?
Yeah. Here we are, season 14, talking about bliss. By the time it comes out later this year, next year, whenever it is, are a lot of people going to be in bliss? Like, what is the point of all of this? Like, I'd rather when people start this not think, oh, none of this applies to me. I'd rather it not be something that can't be somehow relatable. And so that's where I was like, I don't want to keep going down this bliss road where we're like, don't worry, you'll get there eventually and then it'll all make sense. I mean, yes, when it comes to spiritual stuff, there is often that, don't worry, it will make sense because you need the perspective. Like you need the benefit of hindsight. You need the benefit of the experience to kind of come together, and then it'll hit you, right? It's usually never in the middle of it, which is why, like, when you go through, like, so when you are in your karma, think about it. You are kind of almost navel gazing. You are in your pain body most of the time, if not all of the time, because all you're thinking about is how you're not good enough and how your entire life reflects that, right? So everything hurts. Maybe things are good in one area because we never suffer fully 100%. So you're successful, like, you think about it. There's always one area in which you're like, I've got this. Barely, but maybe I've got it. It's working out. But the other area is where it hurts. And it usually comes up in some form of relationship in whatever it is. How you relate to your work, your job, your loved ones, your partner, etc. And because you're having to assess so much, either you're numbing to it so you're not thinking about it, or all you're doing is, if you're not pushing it away, then all you're doing is thinking about it all the time. Right? Which is kind of something that you sort of suffered from. Like you said, your mind constantly wanted to connect dots and make sense of it all and make sense
just
of your
so
hurt.
It could be like, so I could deal with it and move on.
Exactly. But the risk is when we do that, we overthink ourselves into a corner, and sometimes we attribute meaning to something that you said, then becomes meaningless because it's actually not what it is.
Yeah.
And the benefit of understanding karma the way we've shared it is the fact that it gives the largest perspective possible. So it encompasses everything, simplifies it. So it's not just about like, oh, because this happened to me when I was 5 and then this happened to me, and all the ways in which we often will try to connect dots in our human brain. And by doing that, and by taking it and understanding it through the spiritual body, we heal it in a way in which it covers it all. And that's just what requires consciousness. It's very simple. It's not necessarily easy, but it's effective once we can do that and understand
because
ourselves.
Once you can understand that how it's playing out in one area, you naturally apply it to how it's playing out in all the other areas.
Precisely. So as we do this, we understand. So as we go through this process, that's how we start to build up our power. Because it's our karma that reminds us and shows us, which is why we hurt. We hurt because we believe we are powerless.
Damn straight. Because
as humans, we are powerless. We've always been victims of circumstance, victims of our environments, victims within our social hierarchies and structures, that we've actually never been fully empowered beings. So when we talk about divine power, it can be difficult for somebody who might not be close to that to think, well, I'm eventually going to get there. That just sounds like maybe in 5 lifetimes. But
and also what is it? You tend to also apply old school ideas to what that means. Oh, I just need to, I don't know, tell this to fuck off, or I just need to walk away, or I just need to, show where my power is.
Yes.
So you don't fully understand what power is either,
Yeah,
because
it's just reaction,
you're filtering it through. And then you also don't fully understand that relief from pain for a moment is not power.
No.
Either.
No. And exercising certain choices could be an expression of power, but sometimes it's just a reaction too.
Yeah.
It's a pain response.
Yeah.
It's just a pain response to be avoidant as opposed to really being open. And you're starting to be in your power because you can remain open to possibilities, open to things that you weren't normally, especially in your karmic life, because in our karmic life, we tend to keep it really small. I'm going to stay close to those people I know who won't hurt me or betray me or disappoint me.
Or stay close to the patterns that I know.
Precisely.
They're predictable and familiar, although they don't necessarily serve me.
Yes. And we did say in the previous episode, there's a level of predictability in some of our relationships and bliss, but it's not the same thing.
It's just, I trust you to show up.
Yeah. I'm okay if you don't. But again, it has more to do with, it was really in the substance episode. So if we use predictability, I just want to make sure that there's that distinction. But generally speaking, predictability is just like not even a thing. It's just because
the
know
predictability
myself.
is I know myself so well, and also I'm not waiting for everything to go to shit, so I'm not constantly in defensive mode. Mm-hmm. So the predictability is it's a kind of different predictability. It'll all be okay.
Yeah, exactly. Because I know myself, like you said, which is personal power to the 10th degree. So when we're working through our karmic undoing process, going through hell, which is huge in terms of personal power, is that hell period. Because that's when you're like, if I can get through this, I can get through anything. I mean, karmic undoing process will show you that, but sometimes you're just like, okay, now I'm just going to settle for like better, right? Better enough. But after hell, and when you're really reaching your full fate, is when you're like, wait, there are so many possibilities to this life I never saw before. And I think I want to explore that. That's when you're really like, you've got your personal power pretty much locked in.
When you're going through something like this, and this really is at whatever time, because there's also this, I'd say, misconception, maybe, and it's something that we don't necessarily acknowledge, that once you're out of your karma, everything's just perfect and easy and fantastic all the time. And I think that from the other episodes that we've done in the course of magic and even in bliss, the difference is you're always fine. And there's always a degree of you that's underneathly kind of like happy, or, you're not in a pain state.
Right.
But it's not always just fantastic all the fucking time. And I think that the reason why I say this, and it's not about a pause moment or a pressure moment or anything like that, or whatever the fuck those moments were. It's more that when we don't quite see what our fate is showing us, it can feel confusing. And as humans, we naturally want to revert back to the old patterns and beliefs and things that we have relied on in the past, because it looks similar, but it's not, right? And so we kind of almost try and make it similar.
Yeah.
And
respond similar as we would have.
And respond, exactly.
But you
Although
can't.
sometimes we can't. So then it's even weirder, because you're like, I can't respond as I used to, but I also don't really know what's going on. And in those times, it's really useful just to ride through it. Yeah. And for some people, you're going to maybe overthink a little bit. For some people, you're going to overfeel. For some people, you're going to do whatever you're doing. You've just got to kind of let yourself ride through that and just come at it with tenderness and a bit of grace.
Yeah.
And because you don't really move on from a particular juncture or experience in your fate until it is completely integrated. So it really is about kind of just like, let's just live through this.
Yes. Because
we always know that it will end. That if there's anything else that we've learned in our karma, if we've learned in anything that we've done, is that if we're being pushed to see ourselves bigger, differently, better, deeper, as we discussed in the last season, sometimes we just need to finish whatever that process is and to get whatever that is at the end of it.
Yeah. Because we are here for our growth and evolution. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, as you described, we don't get to move on within that big fate tapestry we've talked about. We don't get to move forward until everything gets juiced from that particular experience or moment, because that's what seals the power, so it can't be diminished. It's like, okay, I've gotten everything I know I can from this particular experience. Going forward, we encounter something either similar or just a challenge, and suddenly we find, wait, this doesn't bother me like it would have months before.
No, exactly.
And it's because I know somehow my consciousness has been sealed in such a way where it's all fine. I got this.
To the point where sometimes you don't even notice that it happened again,
Yeah.
or it's even
Yeah.
remotely like it,
Yeah.
because you're like, oh, whereas before I took that to mean all these different things.
Yeah.
Now I just see it for what it is, and actually it's totally fine.
Yeah.
And we just keep going.
Yeah.
So
post-karmic undoing process, you're kind of done thinking so hard about things.
yeah,
Because then it just becomes this need to rationalize everything, every single experience. And that's why, because we've said, yes, a lot of things get easier because you get stronger, you get more powerful, and this is the path. But life on earth, life in separation, has its stressors. There's no avoiding those. Not unless you want to go live off as a hermit and hide out on some hilltop by yourself. You're always going to be here for your growth and evolution, which means you're going to hit up against certain things.
yeah,
But they don't have to be devastating like they were in your karma. So by the time you get through magic, by magic, you're like, wow, I am powerful enough to make these sort of transformations in my life and add all these really nice things and experiences that I could never in my karma because my life was so narrow and limited. And so by the time you're in bliss, you're like, wow, I'm really just like all over the place with my power. Isn't that lovely?
yeah. But that kind of feeling good about not getting knocked off, and that kind of defensive nature, that's just the memory of karma.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't believe we're having this episode, but you know, when you think about karma and you look back on it, or if you listen to any of the old episodes or our books, or a lot of what happens to us because we've been reacting from that space. So it's that idea that, you know, if you're not going to take responsibility for how you played into a dynamic, that dynamic will persist. And so when we're kind of out of that space and we are playing differently because the rules have changed, because there aren't anymore, it's the memory of who we used to be that can inform it rather than the reality. And it's extremely important to remind ourselves of that when we can.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's as simple as going out, doing a sound bath, going for a walk, laughing with a friend, getting back into our actual bodies rather than the illusion of a pain body that we're no longer carrying around. But living in a world of separation, which is still governed a lot by that karma,
Yes.
sometimes it is hard to remember that you're not.
Yes.
And sometimes that's the biggest challenge, but it's just a memory.
Yeah. So by the time you get to bliss, as you said, we have no memory of karma. Like you said, if you were to try to go back and write those karmic books, you would not be able to write them as you had, which is a lot more raw. I mean, to be fair, we edited them to such a degree and scrubbed them a bit that they don't necessarily
everyone got saved from like all the really raw wow on my side, I'll be honest.
Yeah. But if you were to go back and try to write them, you would write them with such the benefit of hindsight that it would be lacking the emotional component, which is important.
Yes.
That makes it real. Because as we know, our emotions or our feelings are, and how we associate them with a particular situation or experience is actually what makes it real to us.
And just because it's written down doesn't mean it's still real either.
Oh, no, not at all. It's like a fucking diary. It's like done.
Yeah.
You know?
But I think it's just important to say.
Oh, yes. For who?
Because when I look back at, those books, the wisdom in it is what's interesting to me, not the experiences within them. For me personally, because they're obviously my experience. But it reminds me that the very tenets of power kind of remain the same.
They do. They don't change. They don't change.
And that's what's really nice, is that actually I just have to really listen to myself and allow my mind to be blown.
Yeah. That's why we said before in the previous episode, ignorance is bliss. By the time we get to bliss, we are done. We don't have to hold the memories of our previous lives because they don't have to inform any of our behaviors, any of our choices, any of the steps we choose to make in this unwritten part of our fate. And if we try to bring it back in, we're just going to taint everything with the memory. And as we know, memory is not accurate ever. No matter how good your memory is, it is never 100%. Because
you're only remembering bits. You're not remembering all of it.
Precisely. And you're remembering it through a very specific filter.
And that filter was already pretty skewed considering where you were.
Precisely. So again, it just does not serve. imagine then, okay, you've come out of your karma. You realize life is not what you think. Then you're going to start making different choices. That requires a certain amount of personal power. The more you realize your potential and the other possibilities, it means that that power starts to coalesce in such a way that you can, it's almost like building. It's the constant building and building of this personal power into something greater. So by the time you get to bliss, you're in full divine power because you have nothing that's tethering you to that old life and any kind of karmic reality, whether it's your own or somebody that you are close to, your partner or your family. And that's what can make certain relationships a bit tense, depending on whether or not anybody you know is tethered, because you cannot be tethered anymore. And
you're just like, I'm going to just do whatever I want to do.
Yeah. I mean, you have to.
It's all going to be fine.
You have to. Yeah. If you don't, it actually starts to get really icky.
Yeah.
It starts to feel like something is disintegrating within you. And that becomes destructive. As we had said before, the early stages of bliss could last a long time. I think that was in the previous season. I don't think it was in this season. Because we need this adjustment period, just to figure out and how to utilize and engage with all that divine will and power that's required to live in this particular place in our lives, So we need space because you need to be in your own energy. Again, I think this is season 13 stuff, like where the divine needs to experience itself in a way. So it does need space.
Yeah. But you can kind of have the mix of both, which is nice.
Well, the point of bliss is that, again, you don't exist within a vacuum. So you're not necessarily hibernating or as a hermit. You just need to sometimes experience yourself. So you are going to grab the space when you need it. But in these early years, it could just feel very spacious in your life. And that's why purpose is so important and why we've been banging on about purpose since season 1, season 2. Because if you have all this space and you have all this power and you have no means in which to channel it, you will start to feel as if you have no reason to live. You will just lose all sense of, why am I here? And it's that groundedness. That's why all the episodes before this were, are you going to do drugs? You might decide to, you need to have sex. That keeps you grounded. That there's all these ways in which we need to deal with the power that we start to accumulate over this period, and ways in which we need to exercise that power where it is creative and beneficial as opposed to self-destructive. But it will get to a point that, as this divine power, since we're not used to it and nobody ever really lives fully with this divine power on this earth plane. The reality is that it arrives in waves so we can adjust. So there's times in which it could start to feel like too much. You're like, I don't know what to do with this. It's almost like a high, but then you're like not that high. And then you're just kind of like, I'm going to the grocery store. How am I supposed to deal with this? And I'm like really high. Ever go to the grocery store when you're like really high?
Is it like that?
It's a bit like that. You're like so overwhelmed by all your options. Yeah, you have no means to do it. You're like, I'm not going to buy the whole store, but I kind of want to buy the whole store because everything looks so good and yummy. And I want to try this and I want to do this. It's like that feeling.
And then at the same time, can I ask a question then?
Yeah.
If you had old weird habits like serious overthinking, is that when they really come into force because you've got all this energy and power and you don't really know where to put it, so it just kind of goes?
Technically, no, really. I would love to say yes, so that way it could make sense to you, but actually no, because it would almost blow out your mind.
Okay.
You wouldn't be capable of it.
Okay.
What gets you overthinking is all the space you have.
Okay.
Space without the extra power.
So why do the waves arrive then?
They arrive so that way, well, actually, there's a few reasons. The first has to do with we're preparing for something. So it's usually something about it's something that's going to require the fullness of our power. So we don't have time to incrementally develop it. On a soul level, divine power is going to feel a lot more instantaneous. It's going to, because it's natural place. But the issue is that in this human world, like as in our full physical bodies and on this earth plane in a world of separation, we don't get to experience it like that. It does not work. We would go crazy. So we have to have it in waves for that reason, as well as love, because we need to be able to shine more and we need the energy to light up a room. So the third reason has to do with truth. Just to be able to be the full divine, we need to be able to live as the divine. And that just requires a lot. It
I
requires...
don't know what this one means. I don't know what it means.
No, it does. It actually means energy.
So it's
Energy
basically we're
in
just
all
getting
the
more and more
bodies.
energy and more power so that we can jump to wherever we're going to go, or force whatever we need the will or the force or the whatever.
Exactly. And it's not like we're low in something, so we need a boost. It just means, and it's what you said to me the other day, it's almost like a reservoir. So by the time we're in this space, remember a few episodes ago, we talked about how we're so extra. By the time we're in bliss, and we're getting there through magic and post-karmic, etc., we are so extra. We are the biggest beings we've ever imagined ourselves to be. Or we're well on the way to becoming those bigger beings. We can no longer be contained or housed by our old lives in any form, really. When we're there, that divine power is so potent, which we don't really talk about its relationship to desire, which we could if you really want to. I'm like, if you want, that we're going to call it forth, even if it seems like our human lives can only take so much. We're going to want to push that because we're going to be like, this isn't going to, no. The situation I'm about to enter into is going to require a lot more of me, and I can do that.
Yeah. I can write this film. I can produce this movie. I don't know why I'm going there, all film.
I know.
I can change countless lives. I can figure out this vaccine. I can do this.
Yeah, I can really just do, and all these things I may not have really imagined myself capable, or might have just shoved and kept in the realm of fantasy when I was in my karma. But now it's like, wow, I can really turn this and
I can make my
real.
fantasies real.
Exactly.
So I'm going to fucking do it.
Yes.
But I guess that's also why you need like kind of that purpose and the core relationships to ground you, because
Absolutely.
otherwise you can just...
You can get very carried away, which is what I was like, I'm trying to think if we can actually use an example, the one I was thinking of. And they're like, but that's not divine power, that's massive ego. So this is what's interesting. When you see a lot of spiritual people or like coachy people with really big followings, you know, who are out there.
Yeah.
And very out there with their books and their whatever. And it seems like they might be the embodiment of divine power. They're not. A lot of that's just very ego driven. And that's always I think that's always one of the things that's been driving me. And for me, I think that was one of the biggest motivators for this podcast. Aside working with you, was in deep down, my issue was how people would regard spirituality and how it would be misrepresented. That would be the gold standard. That being like these people.
Saying some like sentence. It's going to revolutionize my life.
Exactly. That's somehow what spirituality is intended for, which it's not. A person like that, they don't understand what divine power is. You will only understand what divine power is when you can actually get to full oneness. When you can incorporate all the values and tenets of complete oneness, to be at one with yourself and thus others, is when you will really grasp what divine power can do.
But that's before bliss, no?
Yeah. That comes before bliss, but that's actually the training ground.
I see.
That's the training ground for our divine power is, can we get to be at one? Because that at-oneing process, did I say that clearly enough?
Yes.
At-oneing process, that struggle we go through to get there is how we develop the power. It's like winning all these battles and realizing how strong we are. I can come into this. I can do this for myself. I can do this for another person. I've got this. My purpose is this. I'm of service somehow. It brings it all together.
And it kind of anchors you in values that the more powerful you become, those values remain. Right? Mm-hmm. It's a bit like, you know, those stories where like, then the king got all this power and then he got like really heady about it and like just kept going for more power,
Yes.
you know, but then you've got the other guy who's really powerful, but just understands and has the humility and grace and the respect and is a different kind of leader.
Yes.
It's a bit like that.
Exactly.
In my
Precisely.
head.
Yes. Because divine power is not meant to be ungrounded. It just, it fills us up so we can fill up others. Yeah. So...
Which is really nice.
Yeah. And like you said, if experience becomes normal or experience makes normal. So eventually this power becomes normalized. So what was overwhelming or what feels like a lot at first and however it gets expressed, then starts to normalize. So your capacity to hold and contain all that energy just gets greater and greater. And in a way that doesn't feel like disorienting in your everyday life.
So I guess in some ways, the overwhelm is a nice indicator of what's to come, because you'll get used to it. And then it also means that there's all this stuff, all this power you can use and share and love with. Yeah. Which is actually a really beautiful sign of where you're at and where you're going.
It is. It's really beautiful. And it really deepens your presence and purpose in this world. And that is how we transform this world. That is how the divine becomes real. And that is how we can be both human and the divine in full.
Because every step we take it with that power, but with all the other things too, like love and respect and harmony and compassion. And we all become great leaders.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Karma Magic Bliss. For more information, resources, and links to our books, check out our website, karmamagicbliss.com, and Karma Magic Bliss across all socials.
And if you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review.